أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بفضل الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خير خلق الله أجمعين محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في محكم كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وقضى ربك ألا تعبدوا إلا إياه وبالوالدين إحسانا إما يبلغن عندك الكبر أحدهما أو كلاهما فلا تقل لهما أف ولا تنهرهما وقل لهما قولا كريما واخفض لهما جناح الذل من الرحمة وقل رب ارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا. صدق الله العلي العظيم. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained and decreed and passed absolute judgment that you do not worship anyone else, that you are not to worship anyone other than Him, and be good to the parents. That in the same verse or the same sentence or the same context, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declares that the greatest sin that you can do is ash-shirku billah, polytheism, or to take a partner unto God. To say that someone is a partner of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or a helper of Allah. In one tradition, it says Allah khayru sharik, that He is the best partner. Why? If you do something for Allah and somebody else, then Allah says, I want no part in it. That someone else can have the whole part in it. So in the days, they used to do things for themselves and their gods, for example. So they'll say, kill a sheep, for example, and they'll say half of it is for our statue god Hubal and half of it is for Allah, for example. Or in our day-to-day lives, when our actions are insincere and they are partly towards Allah and partly they are for ourselves, or partly they are for something else like Riyā, without getting into the details of Riyā. But Riyā basically is, if you commit to an action and you do this action just so people can see. For example, if I want to donate money to a cause and I place that money and then I say, but you have to announce that, you know, Ali Mehdi donated $5,000 to this cause, whether I pay the money or not, just so people can see it. Or for example, if I pray and during my prayers I'm alone in a room, somebody walks in, I hear that somebody has walked in, so I make my prayers a bit better. I recite better, I slow down a bit. This is called Riyā or Ri'ā. And this Ri'ā means basically that you are showing off. You're just showing to someone else. So that prayer no longer becomes qurbatan Allah ta'ala. That prayer then becomes that, yes, part of it is for Allah, so I can get the wajib off my back. And the other part is that this person walked in so he can see how I am. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says of all of the actions that you can do, ash-shirku billah is one of those actions. To take a partner in God is something that is unforgivable by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, and along with that is to be good to your parents, to respect your parents. وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا, that be good and respect your parents. And then He says, and if, first Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and lower وَخْفِضْ لَهُمَا جَنَاحَ الذُّلِّ مِنَ الرَّحْمَةِ. He says, and lower the wing of humility and mercy, specifically if they reach an old age. For when they reach an old age, this is the time where it's important for you to deal with them properly and nicely, when they reach the old age. Why? Because when you're young, they have power over you. They are everything to you. We have a hadith of Imam al-Baqir that says, never break the promise of your child. If you promise your child something, then do it. Don't break the promise. Because if you break their promise, they lose faith in Allah. Because as far as they are concerned, you are the direct connection to God. And if they're hungry, they just ask you, you give them. That's it. They expect a shelter from you. They don't know that there's Allah beyond this. As a young child, all they think is everything comes from my dad. My dad is the tallest man in the world. My dad is the strongest man in the world. My dad is the smartest man in the world, etc. So on and so forth. So, you should never break your promise to your child. That's one. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that during your parents' old age, that lower the wing of humility and mercy specifically during that time, because in their young age, I don't know if you've ever heard this analogy where they say that, you know, sometimes you say something or you mumble something under your breath and then your father says to you, "What did you say?" It's not because he didn't hear what you said, but it's because he's calculating, if he's giving you a chance to change your words before he gives you a 3D slap across the face. So he gives you that chance to recalculate, what is it that you said? Not that I didn't hear it, why? He has the power. But when he gets old, he loses that ability. Once he's lost that ability, this is the time where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, lower the wing of humility. That stand by your parents' side and act like you don't know. Even if you know and you understand better, you act before them like, I don't know, the knowledge is from you. Thank you for teaching me. I'm not rich, I don't have wealth without you, I still need money from you, for example. Not to ask them for money, but make them feel as if they still have that ability above you because they are your parents. And when they reach of that age, you have to deal with them in that manner. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala places it with the same degree that if you respect and obey your parents, it's like obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you disrespect and disobey your parents, then it's like shirk billah. It's like polytheism. And then he says, وَقُلْ رَبِّ رَحَمْهُمَا كَمَا رَبَّيَانِ صَغِيرًا, and say, oh Allah, have mercy on them in the same way that when they raised me when I was young, when they reared me when I was young. That at the youngest possible time, the way that your parents would deal with you at that time is in a manner that nobody deals with anybody without that relationship, without the father-son or the mother-son relationship. You won't get that sort of treatment. That the treatment that a parent gives to a child, especially at a young age, if you really think at the specifics and the details, it's something that really boggles the mind, something that baffles the mind. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, هَلْ أَتَى عَلَى الْإِنسَانِ حِينٌ مِنَ الدَّهْرِ لَمْ يَكُنْ شَيْئًا مَذْكُورًا. Was there not a time when you were non-existent? That you weren't even someone that was thought of? Remember, sometimes your parents talk to you about a year before you were born, back in 1986 for example, and you say, oh my God, I didn't even exist. No one even thought of my name back then. No one even had prepared anything for me, but my dad was alive at that time and living and everything. So Allah is saying, here's the example, that was there not a time when you were a non-existent being and then you came into being and you were what you were. Imam Ali Zayn al-Abidin salawatullahi alayh, he has written a treatise of rights, and this treatise of rights of the Imam is probably the best treatise of rights that you will ever see. So basically it's a book, and within this book it says the rights of the mother, the rights of the father, the rights of the brother, the rights of the servant, the rights of the employee, the rights of the employer, the rights of the etc, etc. And it's not a very long book, but he has small paragraphs about what their rights are. Now, if we go back and look at today in our society, what we have, what Charter of Human Rights we have the United Nations Charter of Human Rights, for example, that they coined probably 60 years ago, or a bit more than 70 years ago. Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam dictated and wrote this Charter of Human Rights 1300 years ago, 12 to 1300 years ago, just over 1300 years ago. Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, he wrote down this treatise of rights that has within it the rights of a father to a child, a mother to a child, and all of those things that I mentioned. But just to show you how brilliant it was early on, how brilliant obviously Islam is and what is within Islam, and yet they say that we are behind, for example, or backwards. The thing that makes us behind are the people who are the majority of the Muslims that rejected the Holy Prophet, rejected the Ahlul Bayt, and this is the result, what you see today. You see that the Middle East is the most resourcefully rich nation or resourcefully rich land in the world. They're so rich. And yet, they're at the bottom. They're at the bottom. One second this country is taking power over, next second that country. Wars are being fought out within these countries to steal their natural resources. And it's amazing. And to think that, for example, other countries that are accounted of the richest in the world built their nation not with natural resources, but with human resources like slavery. And from this slavery, such as the United States, they became of the richest nations in the world. Why? Because there was no cost to labor. It was free. Free farming, free whatever you want. So the issue is, imagine that our countries, the Middle Eastern countries, should we say, the countries of our forefathers, are the richest in natural resources, but yet they have no knowledge or know-how how to use it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put them on the back foot because of the fact that they rejected. And when they became rejectors, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala placed them in that position. So the core of this is the fact that of the most important things, along with believing that there is only one God, the whole pretext behind believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the pretext behind worship, and the pretense behind obeying your Creator and obeying your parents, the ones who brought you into this world, is the fact that you appreciate the good things that they have done to you. What sort of a human being would you be if you receive a gift or a bounty or something good of somebody, and yet you don't thank? You don't appreciate it. You don't say the minimum thank you or appreciate the good thing that has been done to you. What happens? How do you feel? How does the person who has given you the good thing feel? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about people like this, that they are people that lack wisdom. Because it is of wisdom to be appreciative of any bounties or benefits that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestows upon you, most importantly your parents. Imam Zain al-Abidin says, and he begins with the rights of the father. That what right does a father have over his son? Of the things that he says is that the father, your father is the root of you, that he is your origin. And anything that you see within yourself that pleases you, anything that's good, for example, you feel, I'm strong, know that this is from your father. People say that you are honest, know it's from your father. People say that whatever it is, these good qualities, he says that these good qualities come from your father. That this is something that you shouldn't forget. And he says that were it not for your father, you would have not have come to this world. This is why it is the right of the father that you should take care of his rights and undertake his affairs, especially in his old age. That basically he has ownership, almost has ownership over you and over your property. That this is the degree of the right of the father. That he has ownership of you because he is your origin, and he has ownership over your property, over everything. Even for example, if you have a child, it's good to ask your father to name the child. Rather than, my wife would like this name, or I would like this name, or this name sounds cool. No. Say, Father, I'm having a child, what should we name him? You tell me. Because your input is so important. And you are wise, and you are my root. You are my origin. This is where I come from. You name him. This is the way one should treat one's father. Furthermore, Islamic etiquette demands that if your father enters the room, you stand up before him. You give him your seat, if need be. If you shake hands with your father, your hand should always be the lower one, not on top of your father's hand. It should be underneath. Your hand's the lower one, his is on top. Never raise your voice in front of your parents. Never give them a dirty look. Never look them in the eye. You should lower your face in humility when you are before your parents. And be humbled that they are the ones that have created you. Never walk before them, let them walk before you. They lead the way, they show the way, they know. I know one of the brothers that lives in Australia, and his parents are overseas. And he's a grandfather now. He's not young. And he tells me, before I do anything, I call my parents. I'm going to buy a car, I'll call my parents. I want to buy this car. They say, of course you can. Why are you asking us? He says, I just want the blessing of me asking you and you giving me permission. That's all. I'm going to sell the house, he calls his parents. Whatever he wants to do, I'm going to travel, he calls his parents. He's a grandfather now. But he says, even up till now, this is how I feel, that I need to do this to get the blessing of them telling me yes or no. These are the examples of having someone good. However, the rights of the mother are even greater. When a man comes to Rasulullah, and he asks him, who shall I be good to? Who has the most right for me to be good to them? He says to him, your mother. He says, and then who? He says, your mother. He says, and then who? He says, your mother. He says, and then who? He says, then your father. That your father has a right over you, but your mother's right is much larger than what your father's right is. It's a much greater right that they have over you. Why? Why is the right of the mother so huge? That in reality the right of the mother is so great, and it is correctly proportioned or proportionated in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that it has this correct proportion because of the effort that your mother places in to raising you. And the mercy that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed upon her heart. Within the treatise of rights, Imam Zain al-Abidin says a few things. One, he says that your mother carried you in a place where no one else can carry. That even if somebody wants to do you a favor, they can't put you in the place. Right? Who can put you in their womb? Who can defend you by their organs? Literally. Defend you. Her organs were the defense of you. Her weakness is your strength. Who would accept that? Who would accept that? Just imagine it. Could you think of any relationship where somebody would accept their weakness to be the strength of someone else? Never. But this is the mother. As she gets weaker, you get stronger. She feeds you from whence no one else can feed you. From a place that no one else can feed you. And when she feeds, she goes through difficulty. She loses nutrients, she has to keep regaining the nutrients. And when she gives birth to you, she feels the pain of death. And this pain is so difficult that we have traditions that say after a woman gives birth, she has 3 du'as that she can make that Allah will accept. And after a woman gives birth, until the time that 10 days after she gives birth, until the time of nifas or nafas finishes, if she dies during this period, she dies a martyr. She gets the reward of a shaheeda if she dies during this time. She looks after you in a manner where if she is cold, it doesn't bother her as long as you are warm. If she is hungry, it doesn't bother her as long as you are full. If she's ill, she doesn't care as long as you are well. And all of this she does with a smile on her face and happiness. No one's pushing her towards it or forcing it towards her. She's doing it in a way of happiness. That she's happy, that her son or her child is like that. And then he says, listen to this, he says that when she separates from her child, the son or daughter, when she separates from them, she feels like her life has been taken away. The moment that she has to separate, they have to leave, they get married or whatever, she feels like her life has been taken. That is her, everything has gone. No other relationship can be described in this way. No other relationship can be described in this manner, subhanallah. So therefore, should we then not be grateful? Shouldn't we be grateful? If you think about it, sometimes the smallest things, if someone gives me a job, alright, I try and do good things to get good credit with my employer. So I get credit with my employer, so they tell me, oh, can you come and work on Saturday night or something, and you say, okay, I'll go and work on Saturday night, because it'll give me good creds with my employer. Maybe, 3 months down the track, they go, oh, if we need to sack people, we won't sack this guy because he's a good bloke. And we really go out of our way for them. We really do. It's difficult, but the reality is, when it comes time that they see no need for you, they'll drop you. They'll drop you like nothing. If you're no longer profitable to their company, you're gone. No one has this relationship, but look how much effort we place into, for example, our vocation, and how much effort we place into pleasing our parents, specifically our mothers. So many traditions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In one tradition, a man says that, oh Rasulullah, I have carried my mother on my back, and I've taken it to the Hajj, and I took a bit between Safa and Marwa, the Sa'i, and all of the actions, and I carried her through all of them. Doesn't this repay some of what she's done for me? He says to him, it doesn't even repay one birth pang. You know what a birth pang is? That pain of death, the pain of giving birth. Not even one of those pangs, what is known as a birth pang. And not one contraction. It doesn't even match one of those, even though you carried her around the whole Hajj. That's one. In another one, a man says that I have looked after my father my father is ill to the degree that he's become like a child, like a baby. And I look after him, I wash him, I bathe him, I feed him, I carry him wherever I go. Doesn't this equate some of it? And the Holy Prophet says the core difference is, when your parents were looking after you the whole time, they were imagining that this child will grow up to be a man. And he'll have a family and a life and a future. And he'll bury me one day, long later he'll live his life. And, you know, they never even think of the word death for their child. He says, however, when you look after your parents the whole time, you're thinking, what? I can't wait till this bala finishes. So difficult, so hard. They'll die soon. They'll die soon. One day they'll die. So I'll just keep doing this until they go. And then when they die, I say, al-maut rahmah. Death is a mercy. It came upon them as a mercy. Is this reality or not? Is this truth or not? This is the way it is. This is the way it is. So, unfortunately, it's like that. They ask Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, they ask him how, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا, they say to the Imam, what does it mean, how shall I be good? So the Imam says to him, الإحسان أن تحسن صحبتهما وأن لا تكلفهما أن يسألاك شيئا مما يحتاجان إليه. That for you to be good to them, that you should be a good companion to them. Again, like I mentioned, always be humble before them. Don't roll your eyes at them. Don't give them dirty looks. Don't raise your voice. That you were non-existent when they were existent. Don't even raise your voice at them. Don't look them in the eye. Give them that respect. Stand before them like you're standing before a tyrant. He says, so be a good companion to them, a good friend, like you treat a good friend. How do we treat our good friends? At the end of the day, and when you sum it all up, the way we treat a friend, and there's traditions about this, they say that the hearts of people are like wild animals. To make a friend, you have to tame the wild animal. How do you tame the wild animal? By reward. You do something good. That's how you, usually, how do we gain friendship? It's by that. We meet accidentally at something. Doing a course together, we go to Hajj together, we're traveling together, something, and you make a friend. And then it's sort of like favor to favor. Like he does a good thing, you do a good thing. He does a good thing, you do a good thing. Or she does a good thing and the other sister does a good thing. And this is how it goes along. That the self is like a wild beast that gets tamed. In the same way, when you want to deal with your parents, imagine that. The difference is, you know that no matter what how you stuff up, your parents will always back you up. But you shouldn't take that as a given. Don't take it for granted. He says the other thing is, you shouldn't allow them to be in need of anything. What does this mean? I'll tell you what it means. When you are a child, when you are young, you're a baby starts crying, what does the mother do? The baby can't talk and say what it wants. So the mother walks in and checks everything. Is the baby hungry? I'll feed him. Baby needs a change? I'll change him. Baby doesn't like the way he's sleeping? I'll move him. So the mother offers him all of these things without him even asking. Even as you're growing up, your parents make sure that you come home, there's food ready. You get shocked if you come home and there's no food. It's something that's amazing, surprising. Or you go crazy about it. No milk in the fridge. How can I eat my cereal if there's no milk in the fridge? You get upset because you expect it all of the time. So he says, treat your parents in a way where they don't need anything. They don't have to ask you that I need this. They don't tell them, do you need money, mum and dad? No. You give them the money. If they need it, they'll spend it. They don't need it. It doesn't matter. You're giving it in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Your father or your mother looks thirsty, you get them a glass of water. You don't say, would you like a glass of water? Because they didn't say, would you like a glass? They would bring you the water and say, here. How many times did your parents sit you at the dinner table or the sufra and say to you, eat? And you say, I'm not hungry. And they say, no, you have to eat. I feel hungry for you. Or how many times on a hot day you had to wear a jumper to school because your mother felt cold? That these things that your parents do for you without having to ask you. So the Imam is saying, be a good companion and don't allow them to have any needs. Don't make them be needy of anything. By the way that you treat them, you allow them not to be needy of anything. There's so much more important things regarding parents, but we're coming to the end of the discussion and there's a lot of stories regarding parents. Obviously the way that you treat your parents in a concise manner, will be the way that your children treat you. Don't forget that. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have a tradition that says in Allah, in the verse in the Holy Quran, in Allah, Sari'ul Hisab, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is quick to reckoning, which means that He's reckoning in the hereafter, there's also reckoning in this world, in this dunya. So you get both. You get this and that. So the way that you treat your parents will come back to you for sure. Because your children will see the way it is, and even if they don't see the way it is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will inspire them to understand exactly how you were with them, and they will be the same with you. That's one. The other thing is, it's important for us to be good with our parents in their life and after their death. And this is something that's very important. Someone may be counted as someone that is good to their parents in their life, but not after their death. And someone who wasn't good to their parents during their life, the life of their parents, can be good to them afterwards. And this is a very important point. That's why I've fast-tracked this point. That if your parents are dead, you should visit them. You should go to their grave and visit them. This is something that they enjoy. If you can't go and visit them, at least do a deed, a daily deed for them on their behalf. Read one Fatiha for them, for example, every day. Pray 2 rak'at for them every day. Some good actions that you do it for them. You can't leave, pay someone. Pay someone to go to Hajj, for example. Pay somebody to go to Ziyarah. If you can't pay the whole amount, pay a part amount. And gift it to your parents who have passed away. So even if you were bad to them in the life, at least once they've left this world, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might change and count you as someone who was good to their parents. Because, believe me brothers and sisters, the amount of traditions and the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed it side by side with belief in Him and love of the parents, that if your parents aren't happy, you've got nothing. We have a tradition that says paradise is beneath the feet of the mother. That it doesn't matter what you do if your parents aren't pleased with your actions, then your actions are like nothing. Think about it, it's actually very logical. That the people that brought you into this world, with the exception of, let's say, a small percentage of parents that don't love their children, which is a very small percentage, less than 1%. The majority love their children. The majority love their children. And therefore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has basically shown us a logical equation. And this logical equation, these people, Allah has used them as the medium to give life to you and placed His mercy into their hearts, and they were that medium to make you live. Will you then not be grateful? أَفَلَا تَشْكُرُونَ? That will you then not be grateful for what you have been given and what you have received as a bounty from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? We're getting closer to prayer time, and the reason usually on this night I do talk about parents for various reasons. One is we always need the reminder. A lot of the time we say, yeah, I've heard this, but you need the reminder that this is for real. That if you look at your parents at one dirty look, or you roll your eyes, Allah, even if, the hadith says, even if they have oppressed you, they've done wrong by you, then Allah will not accept your prayers. Just one dirty look, that's it. You look at them in a bad way. A look of hate, a roll of the eyes, something like that. I can't believe, وَلَا تَكُلْ لَهُمَا أُفٍّ, and do not even say fi unto them. But Allah uses the term uff, because I don't think anyone says fi unto you. So they'll say uff, or far out is a good one that we always use. So the Imam says if there was a word that was smaller than uff, he would have used it. But do not even say that. If you do, give them one bad look, then your prayers aren't even accepted, so what do you have? And we know the hadith that says if your prayers are accepted, then everything along with your prayers is accepted. And if your prayers are rejected, then everything along with your prayers is rejected. The prayers are the base of everything. Something very important for us to remember and understand. And again, it's very logical. On this night, we remember the martyrdom of Ali al-Akbar, who is the son of Imam al-Hussein salawatullahi alayhi, the oldest son of Imam al-Hussein. They say at 29 years of age or 30 years of age in some traditions. Ali al-Akbar was a beautiful son. Ali al-Akbar was someone who would be known as Ali al-Akbar was someone that was known to look like Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. أشبه الناس برسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم خلقا وخلقا ومنطقا. That he was basically a copy of Rasulullah in terms of image. That he had this beauty. His beauty was the beauty of Rasulullah. His speech was the speech of Rasulullah. His akhlaq was the akhlaq of Rasulullah. They would say that if they missed Rasulullah, they would look into the face of Ali al-Akbar. They say that if they missed the voice of Rasulullah, they would ask Ali al-Akbar to do adhan. So on the day of Ashura, imagine the heart of Abu Abdullah al-Husayn, when he had to give permission to his son Ali al-Akbar to go into the battlefield, and imagine the heart of his mother Layla and his auntie Sayyidah Zainab, who had to watch Ali al-Akbar go and ask his father for this permission. So they say when Ali al-Akbar went up to Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam, and he said unto him, give me permission, O father, to go into the battlefield. Imam al-Husayn looked to the sky and he said, O Allah, bear witness that I am sending to fight them one who is closest to the looks and the akhlaq and the speech of Rasulullah. Oh Allah, split them up, tear them apart for what they are about to do to my son. He does a huge dua against them. Ali al-Akbar takes this as permission to go out into the battlefield. When Ali al-Akbar mounts his horse and he heads down towards the battlefield, Ali al-Akbar pushes apart the enemy and kills about 80 of the soldiers. And then when Ali al-Akbar is fighting, Layla, his mother, is looking from the tent at the face of Imam al-Husayn. She can tell the situation by the look of Imam al-Husayn and the look of his face, that every time the face of Imam al-Husayn changes color, she knows that Ali al-Akbar is in some difficulty. Imam al-Husayn's face changes color, so Layla asks Imam al-Husayn, what is happening to Ali al-Akbar? He says, one of the enemies that has approached him is an enemy that is to be afraid of, that I am afraid that he will kill Ali al-Akbar. Oh Layla, go inside your tent and do dua. Do you not know that the dua of the mother is accepted? So Layla enters the tent and she stands and she looks towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She looks up towards the heavens and she says, Oh Allah, in the same way that you returned Yusuf to Yaqub, please return my Ali to me. And then Ali al-Akbar defeats this enemy and he heads back towards the tent and he comes and sees his father. He says to him, Oh father, the thirst has killed me. Oh father, the thirst is killing me. Oh father, the heaviness of the sword. Please give me one drop of water so I may have the ability to go back and fight. Imam al-Husayn looks at Ali al-Akbar and he tells him, from where will I get you water? Oh Ali al-Akbar, go and say goodbye to your mother and fight until your grandfather Rasulullah comes to you with a glass from paradise and he will feed you, he will allow you to drink water from paradise from which you shall never become thirsty. Ali al-Akbar goes into the tent. His mother Layla has already heard the speech and she is passed out. Ali al-Akbar places her head on his lap and he begins to cry until his tears fall and they hit the face of Layla. Layla awakens and she sees Ali al-Akbar. She says, it is as if I smell the smell of my son Ali. He says to her mother, I need to go out and fight. She says, go on out, fight, but please return. So Ali al-Akbar exits the tent and enters the tent to make her feel like he is going to return, to make it softer on her, to make the ability of the mother feeling the parting from her son softer. And then Ali al-Akbar mounts the mount and heads back down and he fights them like a ferocious lion, killing another 80 of the enemy. And then as they all approach him and come around him, one of the enemy hits him with a spear in the hip. Ali al-Akbar falls on the horse and he is still held onto the horse. The enemy take the opportunity and one hits him with a sword and one with an arrow and one with a lance. Ali al-Akbar bleeds all over the horse until the blood covers the eyes of the horse. The horse hopes to go back to the camp of Imam al-Husayn. Instead it goes into the enemy, and as he goes into the enemy, each of the enemy begin to hack away at Ali al-Akbar until he falls from the horse. He calls towards Imam al-Husayn. He says, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Imam al-Hussein sees this, it is narrated of Sakina, the daughter of Hussein, that she sees her father, that when he hears the cry of Aliun al-Akbar, that as he runs towards Aliun al-Akbar, he falls and he stands up again 3 times because he could not believe the cry that was coming from his son Aliun al-Akbar. When he gets to the body, Imam al-Hussein throws himself on Aliun al-Akbar, but he has no power. He has no power to pick up Aliun al-Akbar and take him back to the tent. So he asks the boys of the Hawashim to pick up Aliun al-Akbar and take him back to the tent. As he heads back, they say that a lady that walks out of her tent and it is like the floor, the ground has been illuminated by her. This is his auntie Zainab. She says, Aba Abdullah, where is my Ali? Where is my nephew? Aba Abdullah turns towards her and he tells her Ali is gone. My Ali is gone. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم معا. Everybody, السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون العاقبة للمتقين. Allahumma hasten the reappearance of our holy Imam Ajalallah Farju Sharif. Allahumma make the tie between us and our parents stronger and make us of the people who have the blessing of their parents and the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Oh Allah, help us against our lower selves in the same way you help the righteous of your servants against their lower selves. Oh Allah, free our prisoners of conscience, cure all our ill, especially of the ill of the Muslims and the ones that are present here. Have mercy on our dead. Allahumma, please accept this little from us and accept our dua and allow us to have the blessing of our Imam Ajalallah Farju Sharif. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة وأهدى ثوابها إلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات. فاسبق الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.